Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. A core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I'll be your host. Today's guest is Dr. David Brownstein. Dr. David Brownstein is a board-certified family physician, is one of the foremost practitioners of holistic medicine. He is the medical director of the Center for Holistic Medicine in West Bloomfield. Dr. Brownstein has lectured internationally to physicians and others about his success in using natural hormones and nutritional therapies in his practice. He is a graduate of the University of Michigan and Wayne State University School of Medicine. Dr. Brownstein has lectured internationally about his success using natural therapies in regards and now doing COVID therapy, and we're going to be talking about that. He's also authored 16 books, Iodine, Why You Need It, Why You Can't Live Without It, and also right now his newest book, A Holistic Approach to Viruses. Dr. Brownstein, it's such an honor to have you on your show, and I know you are just the 16 books alone just tells us you're such a wealth of information.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
I know we want to get into a little bit of the COVID and how you dealt with it. It's very kind of unique in a unique fashion. But I'd like to kind of create a little bit of a background. I mean, why you started in conventional medicine, and obviously you are not there now. I mean, what made you shift into doing what you're doing now?
I didn't start off wanting to be a holistic physician. I started off wanting to be a physician, and the only thing I knew growing up in my family was you went to the doctor when you were sick, and you took whatever they told you to take, and you didn't question anything. So I went to medical school to model myself after my family doctor, and I really didn't have any idea about holistic medicine. I bought what I was taught in medical school, and I did a residency in family practice, and then began practicing conventional medicine, doing it as I was taught. I didn't do anything alternative. I had no interest in it. And I used to tell people don't do vitamin C and, any alternative things because, that's what I was taught. So my turning point came about 6 months into that practice of medicine. I was in a busy family practice office. I had a lawyer and started negotiating a buy-in for partnership at the 12-month mark. And for a couple of nights, I had lost some sleep, which was unusual for me. And after the third night of not sleeping great, I was getting ready to go for work, and I blurted out to my wife for the first time, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. Now, keep in mind, she met me when I was 18. At that point in my career, I just finished my residency for 6 months. I was just starting. And we had nearly $100,000 in student loans. And, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And she said, well, what's wrong? And I said, I'm not really helping. I didn't feel I was helping people enough. I was treating them with drugs that weren't treating the underlying cause of their problem. And I was having to use more drugs to treat problems from the first drugs. And I just didn't see, I went to med school to help people. I didn't see that this was really helping people. And she said, well, what are you going to do about it? I said, I don't know, but I can't do this for the next 3 or 4 decades. And so around that time in my career, I had a patient who was bothering me to meet his chiropractor. Now, I had never met a chiropractor. I never knew what they did. Never visited one before. And I used to tell patients, don't go see them because I thought they were dangerous. And this patient was persistent. And in my anxiety and lack of sleep and unhappiness with what I was doing, I did call that chiropractor and set up a dinner meeting for a few days in advance. And when that day came around, I came home from work and told my wife I was going to cancel the meeting because what could a chiropractor tell me? And she said, it's too late. It's too late to cancel. You have to go. And she told me to be nice as I was walking out the door. And I go to the meeting. His name was Dr. Robert Radke. He started talking to me about using functional biochemistry and using vitamins, minerals, herbs to influence biochemistry and physiology, and about his success with using products like that. And either he was not telling me the truth, or there were other therapies out there I wasn't taught. And at that meeting, Dr. Radke gave me a book, Healing with Nutrition, by an allopathic physician, Dr. Jonathan Wright. That's who wrote the book. So Dr. Radke and I hit it off at that. We became good friends and close friends, and from that moment on. And I took that book home and I read it till late at night because my father was very ill with heart disease at that time. My father had his first heart attack at age 40, his second heart attack at age 42. Over the next 20 years, he was suffering from continual angina, and he was popping nitroglycerin pills like they were candies. And he had chest pain when he did anything. He was on 12 different medications for heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. He looked awful. He was pale and pasty looking. He had no energy. I was waiting, and my family members we were all waiting for the call that he had died, at any moment. And so after I read that book that night, I called my dad in the office the next day, and I said, "Hey, Dad, I want to draw a couple blood tests on you." And I did 2 blood tests on him. I checked his thyroid levels with a much more detailed thyroid analysis than I had ever done. And I checked his testosterone levels, which no one had checked. His testosterone levels came back below detectable limits, so, somewhere near 0 on the lab test. And his thyroid levels were in the lower part of the reference range. So I put him on 2 things, natural desiccated thyroid hormone and natural testosterone topically. And within 7 days of doing that, his angina, 20-year history of angina, went away and never returned. His color went from pale and pasty on his face to pink and healthy looking. He could now do things without getting chest pain, and he was doing things. And he called me up after 7 days and said, it's the first day I haven't had chest pain in a long, long time. And 30 days later, I checked his blood tests. His cholesterol levels that were stuck in the 300s fell below 200 without changing any of his bad dietary habits. His inflammatory markers were lower. And, as soon as I saw that happen, I decided that's what I wanted to do in medicine. And I did a 180 pivot and started researching things that support the immune system and support the physiology and biochemistry versus the drug therapies that I was taught in medical school that work by poisoning the physiology and biochemistry. It either poisons enzymes or it blocks receptors in the body. That's how well over 98% of most drugs work in the body. And that was 28 years ago. I left that practice. I went to, I told the partners I was leaving. They said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go do holistic medicine." And they said, "Well, what's that?" And I said, "I don't really know right now, and I'm going to figure that out." And they said, "Why don't you just do it here?" And I said, "No, I can't do it in an office like this. I need a holistic office to do it in," even though I didn't know what it was. But that's when I left and I started doing it. And, here I am nearly 3 decades later, still kicking, still doing it. And I have 16 books that I've written about it. I write a national newsletter and just published a peer-reviewed article on my intervention with people suffering from coronavirus. And, they build the positive effects we've seen by supporting their immune system.
Yeah, and you were, the FTC, you were one of the people that actually happened to me as well. FTC was going after me for just supporting the immune system or talking about supporting the immune system. But they were going heavily after you as well, right? And you were just talking about your success stories.
Yeah, I was talking about my success stories. I never said it was a treatment for COVID. It's a treatment for the immune system that helps people with COVID. And but they gave, they sent me a letter and told me I had 48 hours to remove everything or else. And, I complied. And I, continued treating patients. That was after I treated 107 patients. And now we've treated 500 and I think we're at 517 right now. And we have a couple of hospitalizations among that group. And we have no deaths in our patients.
Yeah, it's incredible. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to get back talking about your program and the impact, what it contains, and how it's helping. Take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm here with Dr. David Brownstein. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. David Brownstein. He is the author of 16 books. His newest book, A Holistic Approach to Viruses. And this book was given birth pretty much during the pandemic, right?
Yes, I wrote the book after treating our first 107 patients, and seeing our patients do better. And I wanted to put the information out there because back then there was nothing going on. There was pretty much, you get sick, you stay home, you quarantine yourself, and if you can't breathe, then you go to the emergency room. And remember a year ago, if you go to the emergency room and you're ventilated because you can't breathe, there's an 88% chance you're going to die at that point. So there was really not much there was not much hope out there, and everyone was scared. And we were seeing good results in our practice, and I wanted to get that information out there.
Yeah, and so, I have practices that shut down, and they were thinking we need to kind of protect the people that are coming into our center, and we need to protect our employees, and you were just not one of them. You just kept going. Well,
look, we didn't shut down. What happened was, I followed COVID from the beginning of the crisis, and when the first announcement in Japan of 3 patients with atypical pneumonias who had a novel coronavirus, and then quickly thereafter, Italy started following, and Spain, and and so on and so on, and so I followed it closely from the beginning, and I knew, once it started going to other countries, I knew this was a potential worldwide pandemic, and it would probably come here. And so, when it came closer and, hits the U.S. at the end of January, beginning of February on the West Coast, and then, shortly as February went on, it's moving east. And then I think the first case in Michigan was either the end of February, beginning of March. But I remember I had a meeting with my staff, and, at the end of our work week, my office manager came to me and said, "You've got to talk to them." She said, they're all scared out of their minds. So no one's going to come to work Monday. Everyone's going to lock their doors and stay in their house, for as long as this lasts. And so we had a meeting in the waiting room, and I told the staff that we've been treating people with viral infections by supporting their immune system for 28 years and successfully doing that. And undoubtedly, we've treated many coronavirus patients, even though I have no test to show for it, because we know coronavirus affects about a third of influenza-like illnesses every flu season. And our patients weren't hospitalized, weren't dying anywhere near the reported rates during these, almost 3 decades. So in that meeting with my staff, I reminded them of this, and I said, look, what's going to happen? We had a few cases in Michigan, I think, that week. And I said, what's going to happen is they're going to quarantine everybody, and they're going to lock us down, and doctors are going to shut their offices down in droves, and patients are going to have nowhere to go. And we need to be there for them. And we have a therapy that can support them and help them in their time of need. I said, I can't guarantee it's going to work because I never treated this strain of coronavirus, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. We are endowed with a fully functioning, adaptable immune system that should be able to survive viral infections and coronavirus infections. And otherwise we wouldn't be here as a species. And so I said to them, I'm going to work through this. And I'm going to see patients until either I get sick or they won't let me. And I'm going to do our therapy. And if it doesn't work, we'll try and find something that works. But I'm going to do the work. And I said, I'll do it alone if nobody else wants to work. And I said, anyone who doesn't want to work, don't feel pressure. Your job's not on the line. And, people were scared. We didn't know. And I, made no guarantees. And about 60%, maybe 50, 60% of my staff, stayed working. And we did it, and we treated people the same way we treated them for 28 years. And I also said to my staff at that meeting, they call it the practice of medicine because the first 28 years, we were practicing for this very event. This is an event that conventional medicine has no answers for back then. They don't know what to do, and we've been practicing for just such an event, and we have a therapy that I think may help. And time will tell, and we shall see. And when it started, and our patients started calling with, flu-like symptoms, and they can't breathe, and they can't taste, and they can't smell. And the biggest complaint was they were short of breath. They were losing their oxygenation. And, the first week I was very nervous. I wasn't sleeping much, and I was calling the patients every day, and I continued calling every sick patient that I treated every day until I felt like they were out of the woods. And then about a week into it, we started to hear the refrain. We all heard it that, once when they were sick and they couldn't breathe, that after the few days of therapy, they were feeling better. Their breathing was better. They didn't go to the ER. They didn't feel like they need to go to the ER, and they, recovered. And, I was blogging about it and writing about it, and, until I got that letter from the FTC. And we continued, and up to now, we're up to 500 and I don't know the exact number. It's, 16, 17 patients or so, 516, 517, with a few hospitalizations and no deaths, much lower than the reported rates.
I mean, that's just so incredible, and just proves the power if you support the body appropriately instead of, like you're saying, the regular medicine, traditional medicine. I mean, all you do is that you shut down functions, you block receptors, and you poison enzymes, so you pretty much shut down normal functionality. But here you're using the nutritional components to then support healthy functionality and allowing the body then to regulate and control the effect of a virus in an appropriate fashion.
Right.
So what did this therapy look like? I mean, they couldn't breathe. I mean, how did you deal with that?
Oh, look, we used the same therapy we used for close to 3 decades for anyone with any viral or bacterial illness. So, look, many people think we know what specific virus or bacteria what they have when they're sick, and most of the time we don't. We take a guess what it is, but we don't know. So sometimes you don't know if it's viral or bacterial, but until as soon as the first sign of illness, what I had patients do is use 100,000 units of vitamin A, straight vitamin A, 50,000 units of vitamin D, 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C every hour until either bowel tolerance was met or, they had some other side effect from it, and iodine. And if they were taking iodine, they were told to double the dose. If they weren't taking iodine, they were told to start 25 milligrams. And this was for 4 days. And during the same time period, they were to start nebulizing a dilute solution of hydrogen peroxide and iodine. And hydrogen peroxide was a 0.03%, so a very dilute solution, and in a sterile saline bag. And then they would put a drop of Lugol's 5% iodine into the well of the nebulizer and nebulize a dilute solution of iodine and peroxide. And in my book and in my paper, I describe why these therapies were chosen. They were chosen because they keep the immune system strong, they keep it from going into a cytokine storm, and they have some antiviral and antibacterial properties to them. And the end results were what we heard routinely was when they started this therapy, they could breathe after a short period of time again, and the symptoms went away. And if people got worse, we did IVs of vitamin C, hydrogen peroxide, and ozone shots. And we didn't do that in the majority of people, but we had to do that on people who needed a little bit more support. And it's worked out well, and it's still working today, a year and a half into it.
Yeah, I love it. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm here with Dr. David Brownstein, and we're discussing a very successful therapy for COVID. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. David Brownstein, and we are are discussing what you can do on what has been done. I mean, right now we're facing people are running for the vaccine to think that is something that can protect them from COVID. But here we have them very simple natural therapies that has worked for decades, if not much more, and it's been proven to be extremely successful. So tell me, I mean, you're telling pretty high doses of the different nutrients. I mean, like comparing to what like vitamin A. I mean, normally it's just like 700 micrograms per day, and then you're doing a much higher dose than that. Obviously, and vitamin C, normally is recommended dosage like 40 milligrams, and I mean it's such a vast difference what the recommended daily allowance compared to what you're doing, and I know that the recommended daily allowance is just pretty much to keep a person barely alive, but it's not when you're dealing with something therapeutically, you need a much higher dose.
Well, I mean, remember, Michael, these were doses for 4 days, and they're doses given at the first sign of any viral or bacterial illness, and they didn't take 100,000 units of vitamin A forever, because that can be a toxic dose. They didn't take 50,000 units of vitamin D forever. So this therapy has worked well. I mean, look, in measles, worldwide, in areas of vitamin A deficiency, countries still recommend huge doses of vitamin A, very similar to what I'm using in kids for a few days. So this is not an unknown therapy, but it's safe. Never seen anyone get toxic, and I don't think you're going to get toxic from 4 days of using high dose of these things. And the proof is in the pudding, because we just see our patients not hospitalized, our patients not dying at anywhere near what the rates reported are for viral and bacterial illnesses.
Yeah, one of the things that I frequently patients, they come to me and say, well, I took vitamin C or I took vitamin D and didn't work, and you ask them what kind of dosage they did. Well, I took very high dose, like 1,000 IU of vitamin D or something like that, and then in their mind that is a very high dose. But like you're saying, if you are dealing with like an infectious agent like this, you need to hit it hard. I mean, obviously it's good to be under the supervision of a professional, but you need to hit it hard, originally, so that you can turn things around and wake the immune system up. And like with vitamin C, I mean, when you're dealing with an infectious agent, you consume a huge amount more vitamin C than you normally would. So that's why it's so important to do sufficient amount.
Absolutely, and these therapies have worked for us, and I've talked to other doctors who've implemented this protocol, and they found that it works for them. And I think that when you study the immune system and you study how these nutrients interact with the immune system, it should be no surprise that they work.
So going, I mean, hydrogen peroxide, we know it's kind of like a cleaning agent, and some people look upon it as something dangerous and you should avoid it. But you actually have people breathe it in, and then also doing IVs of it. So what kind of effect does hydrogen peroxide, and why did you choose that one?
Well, hydrogen peroxide is produced all over the body, and the white blood cells produce hydrogen peroxide when they're in contact with foreign invaders. And so you can enhance that with just using a dilute solution of peroxide and either giving it intravenously. I mean, the first reported cases of hydrogen peroxide used intravenously was before the advent of antibiotics in the I don't remember if it was the 20s or 30s in India. And they were reported, back then, before the use of antibiotics, there was, the death rate from pneumonia was over 80%. And a improvising, young physician tried using dilute hydrogen peroxide because he knew that hydrogen peroxide had antiseptic capabilities to it. It had oxygenation capabilities to it. So when it breaks down in the body, it converts into oxygen. And that he tried intravenous hydrogen peroxide in these patients who had pneumonia, and the death rate went down from 80% to, and I don't have the numbers directly in my head, but I've written that in my books. I think it was in my ozone book. I wrote a long chapter on this. It went from 80% down to 40 or 30% or something like that. And so hydrogen peroxide's been used for almost 100 years in medicine, and maybe not in our country very much, but around the world much more so. And it's one of the most safe and effective therapies that I've seen. It works really well, and there's really not too many side effects from it. And it's a natural thing produced in our bodies.
And so when you're then breathing it in, because you use, obviously IV-wise, then it kind of dissolves in the blood and kind of breaks down. You get water and then an extra oxygen that gets released. But when you're breathing it in, will it not be kind of irritating to the lungs then, or is it safe doing it that way?
Well, it's safe if you use the right concentration. So when you use a dilute solution of hydrogen peroxide, I don't find it irritating to the lungs at all. I haven't had one patient complain about, coughing, irritation, pain, burning, or something like that. Look, it's not that I could say it's 100% successful, because nothing's 100% successful, but as far as safety, there's nothing really safer than using a 0.03% solution of hydrogen peroxide. There are studies out there that show just nebulizing saline when you're sick with a lung disorder helps. It helps to lubricate the lungs. It helps to thin out mucus. And hydrogen peroxide has the added benefit of oxygenating tissue and stimulating its production in the lungs and having, an antiseptic properties to it.
Yeah, because one of the issues, in addition to the virus in itself, is then the kind of the inflammation, along the lung sac, preventing then oxygen to move from the lung into the bloodstream. And that's why the failure of ventilators were so huge. It was not that, here you have lungs that can't move oxygen into the bloodstream, and now you're, pushing all that gas into those lungs, and the gas is not going anywhere because they're all inflamed.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah, so with the hydrogen peroxide, then you will help to kind of calm down that inflammation at the same time to increase in the transport of the oxygen.
Absolutely. It's really, I would, the whole protocol, Dr. Rowan, who's one of my authors on my peer-reviewed paper, titled it the Brownstein protocol, the whole protocol was effective, and I think it's effective when it's used together in combination. But one of the recurring themes my partners and I always heard from patients was after second or third nebulized treatment, which we had them do it every hour when they were sick, they could breathe again. Their lungs started to open up. Their mucus thinned out. They could, oxygenate better. And we heard that over and over and over. And here I am in July, 19 months later almost. The same thing, It's really a remarkable therapy.
Yeah, incredible. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. David Brownstein. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. David Brownstein. He is the author of 16 different books, iodine being one of them, talking about ozone, and his latest book, A Holistic Approach to Viruses, which is very crucial in the era that we live in right now, when there's such a concern with the pandemic that we just dealt with, and now the different variants that floating around, and how we're going to protect us against that. So my question is, you have, obviously you're dealing with the COVID directly and how to treat that, or I should say how to support the individual in a way so that their immune system can deal with the virus efficiently, since we're not
That's
treating
correct.
the virus.
That is correct. It's not treating COVID. It's treating the immune system. It's supporting the immune system. And whether you want to call it COVID or influenza A, influenza B, or RSV, it doesn't matter to me. The immune system is designed to deal with all of these illnesses if it just gets the proper support. And that's what this program is all about.
Exactly. So now we have another issue is that, we get all these people, they're getting, vaccinated, and some of them are dealing with symptoms that are very similar to people then having COVID. So would something like this work for them as well?
Well, again, I think when you're talking about supporting the immune system, sure, I think anything can, look, eating better, keeping sugar out of your diet, drinking water, all that helps the immune system. So it doesn't matter if we're talking streptococcal pneumonia or SARS-CoV-2 or any of it. The immune system is designed to deal with these things in a coordinated, similar fashion, and we're designed pretty darn well if we can just support it instead of using therapies that block it, and not eating correctly, and getting toxic on heavy metals, and so on and so on.
I mean, what's fascinating to me is that we dealt with this crisis, and here you have therapies that are effective, and FTC is going after you when you are communicating about things that people have been helped by. In fact, even the research study that you did, they didn't even allow you to put that on your website, correct?
That is correct. We asked them to publish a peer-reviewed study on our website without comments, and they said no. That would fall in violation of a federal code that said there's no prevention, treatment, or cure for COVID, even though this was nothing of the sort. It was, just being a doctor. It's someone's sick, you're trying to give them the right therapy to support their body in a time of need.
So they're recognizing that there's a crisis, and here you have individuals that are working hard to figure out, how to help people that are in desperate need. And when you then are finding solutions, you're not allowed to communicate about it.
That's unfortunately the world we seem to live in today, and that's a sad place we're in right now, and it's part of the reason why we have 600,000 plus dead from an illness, because doctors were told there's no treatment, and if you treat it, the licensing board and the powers that be will come down on you, and so patients were told there's no treatment, just stay home, and hopefully you get over it, and if you don't, then you go to the emergency room when you're sick enough, and by then the illness is really set in. It's not as easy to treat, no matter what therapy you're going to use, and so I think that's really, when we look back on this, we will look back on this as the dark ages of medicine.
Yeah, and one thing that we cherish, heavily here in the United States, are kind of the protection on the Constitution, and also the different amendments that, give us, or I would say give us certain rights. It illuminates rights that we inherently have, like one of them being, the First Amendment, our ability to free speech. So, it did not apply in this case for you?
I don't think it did. The FTC didn't consider it free speech. They considered I was advertising. So they didn't call it limiting free speech. They called it limiting advertising. I disagree with that. But, look, we're in a pandemic. We're in a worldwide crisis. Why shouldn't we all be reporting what we see works and what we see doesn't work? That's how I was trained in medical school, and I was not advertising anything. I haven't taken new patients in years and years and years. That's not what I wanted. What I wanted was the information out, because people were dying, and there was no hope. The fear was palpable, and we were locked down, and there was nothing. They were predicting 1 million to 3 million dead by the end of last year, and everyone was rightfully scared. And we should have. If our government truly cared about us, they should have allowed. It shouldn't even be no one should be allowing. Doctors should be able to report on what works and what doesn't work in their practice without fear of, losing your license or, legal problems.
Exactly. So kind of looking back, how we've dealt with this, how America has dealt with COVID. and why we were hit so hard. I mean, what are some of the thoughts that you have? How we could have done differently, how we could have educated the American public differently, and how we could have gone about everything differently.
Well, I did write a newsletter on this, and I titled it "Why Americans Are So Unhealthy." And if you compare us to the Western world, we finish last in every health indicator, from maternal mortality at birth to neonatal mortality to longevity. Compared to every Western country, we are last. And 2/3 of us are overweight. Over 1/3 of us are obese. We have, I think, 1/4 of children are obese now. The numbers are depressing. They're shocking. They're alarming. We should be having a Manhattan Project on our health right now. And the reason we got hit so hard with COVID, with all the money we spend on our healthcare, we spend nearly 20% of our GNP on healthcare, which is more than every Western country by far. We get bupkis for it. We get, this horrible COVID outcome. We have more neonatal mortality, than any other Western country. We have more maternal mortality than every other Western country. We don't live as long as nearly every other Western country. It's a disaster any way you want to look at it. For the money we spend, we should be demanding better outcomes. And yet here we are. And I say it's a sad time in medicine for us all.
Yeah, I agree. And instead of then communicating about the fear and in regard to COVID and putting and locking everybody up, what should have been communicating is what can we do to improve our health? Better eating pattern, better thinking pattern, sleeping pattern, living patterns. I mean, and these, if we would have spent the money on that instead of all the other things that money was spent on, I mean, I would assume our outcome would have been quite different.
Yeah, I would agree. And eventually somebody's got to heed the call to say, what went wrong in this, and then and then bring it forward. And when that happens, the postmortem on COVID-19 is going to be an ugly read for those who've been directing us during this.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm curious, you're bringing in iodine. I mean, I know that you use iodine, and that's one of the things that you're bringing that message out to the world a lot. But iodine in relationship to the immune system and COVID, why that? I mean, we all think about it as something that impacts the thyroid, and that's about it.
Well, iodine's an essential substance for the human body. We can't live without it. Every cell needs them. Every cell needs and requires iodine for optimal function. So it's not just the thyroid; it's the ovaries, the breast, the pancreas, the uterus, the skin, and the muscles, the fat. All needs iodine. And so the immune system needs iodine. Iodine has direct viral bacterial properties to it. It helps modulate and regulate the immune system, so you don't develop cytokine storm when your immune system gets hit with a lot of virus particles or a lot of bacteria, and so iodine's required all over the human body, and that's it's a misunderstood statement that only the thyroid needs iodine, and if you've had a thyroidectomy, you don't need iodine because you don't have a thyroid gland. Well, I always remind patients they have skin, they have breasts, they have ovaries, uterus, pancreas, prostate, skin, muscle, fat. That all needs iodine as well. So it's really, I've been using iodine in my practice for over 20 years. It's one of the most important things that I do in my practice.
And in regards to kind of a last question here, I mean, right now everyone is thinking that the vaccine is going to save them from COVID. I mean, what are your thoughts in regards to that?
If they want to read more about iodine, I have a book, Iodine: Why You Need It, Why You Can't Live Without It. It's on my website. As far as the vaccine goes, the vaccine has shown efficacy against getting really sick for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. So that's a good thing. And study in Cleveland Clinic where they looked at their staff and vaccinated, unvaccinated, and those who've had the illness, and who got COVID over, I believe it was a 6 or 9 month time period. What they found was the best group was the ones who had COVID. They had natural immunity. Their immune system overcame the illness, and just like you would expect, they should have lifelong or certainly long-term immunity that should be robust and strong, and they did the best. The next best was the vaccine group. Some of them got COVID, but it was a small number, and that was a testament to, so far, the vaccines do seem to be preventing, severe cases of COVID and hospitalization. The worst case scenario in that group was the unvaccinated. They had more COVID than the other two groups. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was, it was high enough. So there is some efficacy with the vaccine. What needs to be done is proper safety studies to weigh whether that outweighs the adverse effects from the vaccine. And there are adverse effects from the vaccine, just like there's adverse effects from anything, any medical therapy that we do. And, because this was rushed to market, we don't have the safety studies to go by. But I think that we should be able to ascertain or get an idea of what these safety studies are by looking at VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Effects websites, and other articles that have been written about it. But unfortunately, if anyone tries to write about adverse effects from the vaccine, the articles are retracted and censored. So unfortunately, that's the situation we're in right now. So I am hoping that the vaccines give people lifelong and robust protection against this coronavirus and other coronavirus strains, but we'll see. There's been over 6,000 deaths reported to VAERS. There's hundreds of thousands of adverse effects reported to VAERS. In our practice, we saw 7 patients who got the vaccine who had strokes. And they're odd strokes you haven't quite seen before. But, there's pros and cons to everything, and people need to make their own decision. And, we just need the information to make the decision, which is not so forthcoming.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dr. Brownstein, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you so much for everything that you do and for fighting for all your patients and other people's best interest to stay healthy and safe. And I really urge everyone to go and check out Dr. David Brownstein's website. It's drdavidbrownstein.com. And you will have a huge amount of information at that website. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That is it for today. You're listening to Health Made Radio. Remember, check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. 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 Health is what you make it.